Ciao ragazzi, siamo qui con il nostro ospite speciale direttamente dalla California, Brian Carbaugh. Lui è stato uno studente dell'MIT e l'abbiamo conosciuto perché venne ad insegnare nella nostra scuola fisica. E quindi ci abbiamo stretto amicizia ed ora è qui vi vuole concedere l'opportunità di raccontarvi tutto ciò che ha vissuto. Quindi potremmo iniziare e chiediamo, Brian, let's introduce yourself.
Hello, hey, how's it going? I'm Brian, and it sounds like Gianmarco already gave me a really good introduction. But I think I heard that I graduated from MIT last year. It's a math and science university in the U.S., and I know Gianmarco, Pietro, and Vittorio because I came in 2018, I think, to teach at Liceo Scientifico Giovanni da Procida for 3 weeks, and that
Yes.
was a lot of fun. And ever since then, I've come back to Salerno quite a few times, and I absolutely love it. And right now, I'm in California. I'm working. Of course, everything is shut down here in the U.S. right now. So it's great to see you guys. Great to be on.
The first question is, what you can say us about your university studies?
So I studied electrical engineering at MIT, and I just graduated this last year. Um, and it was a very difficult degree. Of course, engineering, all kinds of engineering are quite difficult. Lots of math and science. Um, but it was also a lot of fun and very interesting. And what's great about engineering degrees is that you don't necessarily have to work as an engineer after you get the engineering degree, right? Just because having a technical degree that's very math and science heavy, like like any engineering degree, really opens you up to lots of opportunities, not just in engineering, but in economics and business. At least in the U.S. and I'm sure the same is true for much of Europe. Having a technical degree really opens doors to all kinds of job opportunities. Whereas having maybe less of a technical degree is not quite, or at least what I've seen, it's doesn't open you up to quite as many job opportunities. So I've been really lucky with my degree in electrical engineering. I've done work as a software engineer. I've worked at Apple, and I also worked for this startup in Tel Aviv, which was a lot of fun. I worked at Tesla. I worked as an electrical engineer at Tesla, and then I also worked at manufacturing at Tesla, so building the actual cars, which was really cool. And then I also this past summer I worked at a bank called Goldman Sachs in Hong Kong. So it's like because of my degree in electrical engineering, I've been able to do so many different kinds of work, most of which isn't even related or isn't even electrical engineering, right? So that I think that's for me that was really the biggest value of getting that degree. And that's why I've encouraged a lot of you guys and a lot of people at the Procida to go for a technical degree, an
Yes.
engineering or science
Also,
degree like
the fact
this.
that you have the degree in the MIT, a really famous institute all around the world. So,
Right.
can you explain us some things of the MIT? How do you feel studying at the MIT?
So it
And what
was,
is the environment? How is the environment? Is
right.
stimulating? What opportunities this university gives to you?
Absolutely, yeah. So in general, at MIT, it's known for having a very kind of high pressure and high stress environment. Which honestly is can be good sometimes, and obviously sometimes it can be not so good. And the reason for that environment is that everybody around you is works incredibly hard. Everybody around you is taking all these difficult classes, and there's so many opportunities at the school that you really sort of there's this culture at MIT where everybody wants to do everything. Not only are the courses difficult, but there's also many research opportunities available for people who are getting their degrees. For bachelor students, in most universities, it's difficult for bachelor students to get research, but at MIT, the school will send you overseas to a different country, and they put you with the host family to go teach at universities.
You said to me that you were in a water polo team, right?
That's right. In high school, I played water polo, and then I played water polo at MIT for the first. I didn't continue after the first year, uh, just because I didn't enjoy playing so much at MIT. But it was still, I mean, it was still a great opportunity. And that was one thing that also helped me get into this school is they liked that I played water polo, and I was captain of the team in my secondary school. So yeah, it was great at least to get to play for 1 year.
And all the sports are seen important, or there is a sort of discrimination between sports?
Oh, it's quite a few people at MIT actually do sports, but of course, um, sports aren't nearly as big at MIT as they are at most, many universities in the US, or many of the big universities, right? I mean, we have an American football team, but it's not a very good football team. You don't have the big stadiums where everybody comes to watch, and same thing with basketball and everything like that. So we do have all of the traditional sports. It's just because it's such a engineering focused school, none of the sports are particularly strong or popular, right? So the sports culture isn't quite as strong at MIT.
Mm.
And before you said that you work for different companies, and which was your favorite one, and the environment you found in, for example, the bigger one like Tesla or Apple? What were your first thoughts, and then how your expectation developed in the future?
Sure. I would say I mean, it's difficult to pick a favorite environment. I would say maybe perhaps the internship that I did in Tel Aviv was probably my favorite, just because the company was so small, right? And because of that, you know, you get to know everybody at the company. When the company is really small like that, it's very personal, lots of good interaction with people. I also really liked Tesla because Tesla was on a mission. It was very intense, and you had Elon and everything. But the problem with bigger companies is that there are lots of politics involved, right? There is, people trying to move up the ladder, and oftentimes that creates conflicts between the workers. And this is true at every big company. This is true. I saw this at Goldman Sachs. I saw this at Apple, and I saw this at Tesla as well. So that's the only downside for working for a big company like that. Um, and so I would say that in general, I prefer working for smaller companies. I think that's a lot more fun. And you really feel like you have a lot more control, if that makes sense.
Considering the fact that you visited a lot of country and you also worked in a lot of country, have you noted the fact that in different countries there are different ways approaching to the work, to the job, or to the normal life? So
Absolutely.
can you tell us?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's actually you're absolutely correct. Right. I mean, each country obviously has a very different culture with how they go about work, and it's things as small as how you communicate with other people. If you have a problem with somebody, do you tell them directly or do you go to their manager? Right. And the thing is it's difficult for me to sort of I'd really have to spend some time thinking about what those differences are for each place that I've gone to, right? In Israel, things were very direct. People were very, if they have a problem with you, they'll tell you, and they'll be respectful about it, but they'll tell you. They are not afraid of hurting feelings. Whereas, perhaps in the U.S., oftentimes people, are maybe not so direct with you, right? Which is sort of difficult. And in Hong Kong this past summer, the culture there was adjusting to the culture there for work was also um, was very difficult as well. So all of these different places, they present challenges in terms of adjusting to the culture at all levels, from work to life and everything else. And that's one of the main reasons why I like working overseas, because I think that that's a very exciting challenge, right? And of course, coming from the US, I think, people have a lot of perceptions about culture in America, or that there's no culture in America, right? And so it's interesting to kind of compare what we have here to overseas. And for me, I just try my hardest to adapt as much as possible, so that I don't want to be the stupid American that they
And try to think one of for every nation you've been, the best quality, the best part of the personality of the culture of the nation you've been, and tell us what you think is.
In terms of, I mean, that's really difficult. I would say, I mean, um, I haven't worked in Italy. I did just the teaching, but I would say the Italian culture is probably my favorite. And I don't just say that because I'm talking with you guys, but I mean, with how friendly and how much they make me feel at home, that was my favorite. But for the places that I've worked, I would say probably Hong Kong is my favorite culture. And this is perhaps a bit of a controversial opinion, but I was in Hong Kong during the time of the protests this summer,
Mm.
against the Chinese Communist government. And so the culture that I was able to see in the Hong Kong people through these protests was absolutely incredible. It was very beautiful, right? The people in Hong Kong, they're very and I'm it's difficult. The word in English is stoic. They're very, kind of quiet, and they know how to get things done, but they're also kind of very friendly, and they don't take things too seriously. You know what I mean? It's
Good.
like they're serious but not serious at the same time, in a way that's actually really funny, right? And it's very difficult to describe, right? But I think one story that sort of describes it is one time I was in this neighborhood called Causeway Bay during one of the protests, and everybody was wearing masks because of the tear gas. um and I saw these everybody was running into the metro to get on the train to leave, and everybody was kind of running and going crazy. And then I see this couple, they're holding hands, right? And they're wearing masks. So I don't know which one is the boy, which one is the girl, or perhaps it's two guys. I don't know, right? I mean, you never know. It's 2020, right? And so I see them walk into the metro station, and then they take off their masks and they start laughing, right? So these people are protesting, and they're taking it very seriously. They're putting a lot of passion into it, but at the same time they're having a lot of fun with it, right? And I think that that's a very beautiful thing. And I think I've really never seen that anywhere else. So that was one of my favorite cultures as well, is what they have in Hong Kong. And I absolutely love the Hong Kong people, and completely, I think they're doing a great thing, and for themselves and for the rest of the world.
So
Good.
before we
I
start,
want to. Maybe one day I will work in Hong Kong.
Absolutely. No, it's wonderful. There are some Italians there. In fact, I met somebody from Salerno. So
I will be the next one from Salerno.
Hell yeah.
So before we start recording, you said that now there are some difficulties in America, like in other nations, include Italy. But I want to ask you, in the last few years, the world start questioning the so-called American dream. So if, especially from Europe, if it's really worth it to move to America because of the differences in approaching life. For example, in Italy and in other countries in Europe, the medical assistance is free, while in America it's very expensive. The schools
Grande
also
Pietro.
in Europe are cheap or even free. So I wanted to ask you if from an American, if it's real, this different, and if it's still something real and present, the American dream.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I mean that's a very complex question, and I think, depending on who you are, right? Immigrants coming to the US have very different experiences, right? Right now, of course, with the current, with President Trump and whatnot, the general perception and the general attitude is perhaps a little bit less friendly towards immigrants, right? Which I personally am not so happy about. I absolutely think immigrants coming to the U.S. is great, and I like the culture that has. In terms of sort of some of the difficulties that you mentioned, like healthcare and schooling and things like that. I think that's absolutely true, and for people coming from other countries, that's something that's really difficult to adjust to. And unfortunately, in the U.S., for example, for healthcare, we sort of have it the worst because we don't have a system that is universal, but we also don't have a system that is sort of free market. It sort of has it's a mix of both, which is just doesn't work, right? And um, and so I think for an immigrant coming to the U.S., um, it's ultimately going to be very very challenging, right? And oftentimes what I see is that immigrants will come to the U.S. and they'll have a very difficult time, and perhaps it won't be easy for them to integrate into the United States. But then they raise children in the U.S., and those children, can go on and study at schools and go on to great universities and get wonderful education and everything like that. So I think in that sense, the American dream is absolutely still alive, particularly for some people. But I will say, I mean, it's particularly, today in this day and age, it's much more difficult, for people who are, the older you are, the more difficult it is to come to the U.S. and integrate. And I certainly hope that as time goes on, that the U.S. moves more towards having that image again of being very welcoming and having the infrastructure to support immigrants. So I do still believe the American dream is alive, but I also think that we have a long way to go in terms of really making America a place for everyone, right? And I think that's something that everybody wants. They just don't quite agree with how to do it, right? With the different political parties, the Democrats and Republicans, and
Yes, yes.
so.
Yeah, you talked about politics, right? So when you said like in your company you work, there were like this sort of politics of getting higher and higher in the hierarchy. Is there true also for the university? Because we sort of know from pop culture, like Yale or Harvard University were really politics focused. They're almost politically owned.
Well, I guess, I mean, in terms of for professors at universities, that's absolutely true. Unfortunately, with any sort of big organization, there's going to be those politics, right? For students, maybe that's a little bit more difficult for me to sort of come up with an answer there, right? It ultimately depends on what you're involved in as a student. But for professors at universities, absolutely, those politics do exist, and it's something that I really think is unfortunate. But the unfortunate reality is that once something gets really big and money gets involved and all that stuff, then the politics become very strong, which is quite unfortunate. And I imagine that's the same, not just in the U.S. but all around the world. I mean, from what I've seen in other countries as well, I think that's quite similar.
So, still talking about university, it's like MIT involved in eco-sustainability.
Is MIT involved in eco-sustainability?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a huge culture of that around the campus, and I think a lot of research in different departments is focused particularly on that. In fact, we have an entire degree called environmental engineering, right? Amongst the students in particular, there's a very strong culture of sustainability and moving more towards clean energy solutions in particular. That's the great thing about MIT and many other universities is that they very much support this, and I definitely support that as well. I think anybody can support that. Of course, then it becomes the problem is it also becomes a political issue, and people use it for their political purposes, which is terrible. But I think the science behind it is very beautiful, and it's great to see everybody sort of coming together on that.
I know that the exams are different in America than in Italy. We have a written test and then an oral one, and that's the whole grade you get, the mark you get. I was in America.
Typically, we usually just have written ones. Sometimes we have, depending on the class, sometimes it can be an interview, but typically the exams are just written. And then also in the US, the exams are typically just one part of the whole grade. I know I studied in Switzerland for one term, and the exam in Switzerland is the whole grade, right? Whereas in the US, you have homework counts for part of the grade, and projects will count for part of the grade, and things like that. So, but exams are mostly written in the US.
So they let you create something in project. What's that?
Exactly. So you'll, depending on the course, you can either write up a research paper and turn it in for a grade, or you'll build something. You'll create some new engineering design and then turn it in and show it for a grade, or just homework. Like, hey, you do some homework problems and then you get a grade for it, and that grade will count for the overall course grade. So maybe sometimes exams are only maybe 40 or 50% of the overall grade for the course.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
In Italy, it is all based on exams.
And do you think it's better our method or your, for a student to approach a future work?
Do I think the sort of US system is better?
Yes. What do you think?
Also, yeah, I think that is better the US way.
I would say so too, just because I think just putting so much emphasis on exams perhaps can add a lot of stress to students, and I think the sort of projects, getting a chance to demonstrate what you understand through projects is a lot less stressful and is a lot lower pressure, and I think is a better assessment of people's abilities. But at the same time, I also do think that the US should incorporate oral as well. So I think to be honest, the two should come together, and I think that would be great. But in general, I would say I think having not the whole grade be the exam is a good thing.
And another curiosity, that is often come up in discussion is if in America the people helps each other during the course, or there is a strong competition and everyone work for
themselves. Yeah.
yeah.
No, so it's very, I mean, it really depends on what course and what university. My experience was that people work together a lot, right? Because in engineering, it doesn't really matter the grades you get, you still will get the job. But if you're trying to go for medicine, right, the grades are important because the grades determine what medical school you get into. So if you're studying, if you're doing pre-medicine studies, then people aren't as helpful because they don't want you to get as high of a grade, so that you'll get into the medical school and they don't, and so it really depends. But I would
No,
say
I
my
hate
experience,
this environment.
yeah, it's terrible. It's awful, and I think the best way for you to improve is to help others, right? So for me, I really don't care. You know,
Yes.
it's not about how others
Understood.
do, it's about how I, right? So
And I think that's it. It was a pleasure to talk to you and to receive all your knowledge about the American and also the world.
absolutely, and I would love to spend more time. And let me just say to anybody who's listening to this, I absolutely love Italy, and I love all you guys, and extremely hopeful that things improve with the coronavirus situation. And you know, we're certainly together with Italy in the U.S. and also around the world. I think, you know, everybody loves Italy, and you know, so I hope that things do improve. And you know, for you guys in particular, I really want to come out and visit sometime, perhaps in July or August, because I don't have to come to the office to work, so I can live in Italy if I want to and just work from there. So when
Yeah.
I do, I hope you guys will be there.
So Brian, next week we will do a football, a soccer match between us.
Oh yeah. I'll still be as good as if I had normal feet because I'm so bad at football that it doesn't matter. Johnny knows I'm being serious. All right, I gotta
Bye,
get going. I need to
Brian.
go. My manager's
Good
my manager's
luck.
calling me. I'll
Good
talk to
luck.
you guys soon.
Yeah, bye.